Hello, this is Father Michael Lampe coming to you with another video reflection. Today I will reflect upon the readings for Thursday, March 26th. Our first reading is from the book of Exodus, and our gospel passage is from the Gospel according to John. In this passage from the book of Exodus, Moses is with God on Mount Sinai, and meanwhile, he's been there for a while, and the people below are getting restless. They don't know what happened to Moses. They feel isolated. They feel separated. They want to be with the one true God. They want to worship the one true God, but they don't know where he is. And his prophet, his mediator, his person that he sent to them, being Moses, isn't there. And so they decide they're just going to make their own God. And so they make the molten calf. And of course, God being God knows what they're doing, and his justice flares up. And so he decides that he is going to eliminate the people and start anew. But Moses intercedes on their behalf, and God changes his mind. He relents of the punishment he had threatened to inflict upon his people. I think it can be easy for us to relate to the Hebrew people who were wondering, where is God, and feeling all isolated and separated. During this time of difficulty, of challenge, we may have a similar experience. Like, where is God? Why is he not with us? Why can't we worship him like we want to? But we have to be careful that in this time of difficulty, we don't follow the example of the Hebrew people, inasmuch as they made a false god. And we can end up making all sorts of false gods because we could feel separated or isolated from the one true God, not being able to gather as a faith community. So it's important for us to recognize what our false gods could be. It could be entertainment, it could be comfort. There could be lots of things that we turn to instead of the one true God. And we have to avoid that tendency. In our gospel passage today, Jesus, being God the Son, is trying to help them recognize that he is who he says he is. And yet there are certain members of the Jewish people who refuse to believe him. And so Jesus goes through a list in this gospel passage, a list of the things that point to the truth of what he is saying. He mentions John the Baptist and how so many people were attracted to John the Baptist and his preaching and the things he had to say. But John the Baptist pointed to Jesus. And so Jesus uses John the Baptist as an example or a reference, a witness that he is who he says he is. But Jesus also points to the miracles that he's been performing, the things that only God can do. And yet there still seems to be people who resist that. They don't want to follow him. They aren't listening to these examples, or the people who have been healed by Jesus or set free from all sorts of affliction by Jesus' miracles. They aren't interested. They don't care. They don't want to follow Jesus. Jesus even points to the scriptures. For the Jewish people always would turn to the scriptures to see how God is at work and how God is guiding them. And Jesus says even the scriptures point to him. And yet there are some who still resisted to follow him. And Jesus points out that Moses, whom they claim is their leader, whom they claim that they will follow, who was so many years before Jesus, when Moses wrote some of the Old Testament, Jesus is saying that even what Moses wrote points to him. And so with all of these witnesses, it's interesting that so many people resist to accept Jesus Christ as the Messiah, the chosen one, the one who is to come. And yet, we can have the same difficulty too. We can sometimes resist following Jesus. We can sometimes choose other paths. We can sometimes say, well, I know this is what what God said through the church, but I want to do something different. In that, if we take that route, we're kind of creating a false God, either the object or the thing that we wanted to do, or perhaps we're making ourselves a false God, deciding for ourselves what we want instead of what God wants. Because what God wants is what will make us ultimately happiest, what will fulfill us. And we can so easily choose things that will not fulfill us. And so we have to be careful not to make ourselves false gods or our desires false gods. But instead, look at the witnesses that point us to the one true God. And in this time of difficulty, in this time where we may feel separated, to make the effort to strengthen our faith, to dive into the Scriptures. Jesus says they point to Him. Great. So let's go into the Scriptures and find Jesus there. We can find Jesus through each other, through each other's witness. We can find Jesus by listening to video reflections, for example. But it's important for us not to abandon the Lord, not to have false gods, but to seek out the one true Lord. So let us all dive deep into the different ways that we can recognize God alive in our lives and the different ways that we can better follow Him as we ought. And let us make that our goal for today and really for the rest of our lives. Thank you for joining me. God bless.